Hi everybody, I'm Steve Banass. I want to take a minute and put together a video that I talk a lot about when I'm doing training for the people who work both in my call center and on any of my outside sales staffs. It seems like I'm always trying to determine whether an employee is self-motivated or externally motivated. When you know how to treat a self-motivated employee, you have an employee for life and an easily promotable person. Now, let's talk about the externally motivated person. When a person needs to be externally motivated, they don't always like it. In the first day of training, I always take a minute to tell a story that I learned early in my life. And here's the way the story starts. Now, it was a hot day in the middle of the summer. I mean, it's 10 a.m. and the sun is beating down. And if you work outside, it's one of those days where you know that you're going to be exhausted before it's over. This story takes place on the railroad. And the guys that are working for the railroad, their job is already hard enough. But listen to what they heard this morning after they had been at work.
A train derailed in Pensacola this morning, holding up traffic for hours. That derailment happened on Amber Street, but the 111-car train stretched all the way to Airport Boulevard. Fox 10 News reporter Christina Leavenworth has details.
The only part of the train that got off track were these two engines back here. But as you can see, caused the rest of the train to come to a halt.
The train was completely across Airport Boulevard and there was no other way to go.
Deputies had to block off Airport Boulevard for about 6 hours.
When you get a derailment like this in a train yard and it's blocking intersections, everybody's on the job and it's time to put your back into the work. Back-breaking work, burning that rail out, pulling that rail out, measuring the new rail, getting it set so we can get back to business. Now, as these gentlemen were slaving away and doing their hard work on the railroad tracks, all of a sudden they hear a train pulling up. As the train comes to a stop, it comes to a stop in the last car right next to where these guys are working. And together, the two men look up and see a man dropping the window to speak to them. Hey, Joe Flanagan, is that you? Yeah, that's me. Well, Ronnie, how are you? I'm doing good, Joe. Come on up and talk with me for a little bit. We haven't seen each other in so long. Now, as he walked away, the rest of his friends had to continue working. But they wondered, who is this guy? Well, it was a beautiful train, and a beautiful train car. In fact, maybe you've seen these before. They're beautiful, handmade wooden cars, and when you get inside of them, you can tell that you're in for quite a trip. And here he was, 1 minute breaking his neck on the rail, and the next minute in the cool air conditioning of this cabin car. Now all the guys that are outside and doing the work, all they can see are these two men. Obviously they know each other. They're sharing cold lemonade, laughing, shaking hands again, giving each other a good hug, and their friend comes walking back down off the train. As he walks back down off the train, he takes his cold, air-conditioned, sweaty hat, puts it back on his head, grabs his pickaxe, and as the train pulls away, he starts to put his back right back into the work again. His friends say, wait a minute. Who was that? And he says, you don't know who that was? No, who was it? It's Ronnie Anderson. It's the president of the railroad. President of the railroad? The president of the railroad? How do you know the president of the railroad? And he said, well, that's a funny story. And I think about it a lot. You see, 20 years ago, he and I started for the railroad on the very same day, right out here, repairing track in the yards. And his friend says, what do you mean? 20 years ago on the same day, you started on the same day. He goes, no, it's true. And I knew him before that. Really? We were friends since we were little kids. In fact, our families knew each other. Graduated together, stood up at his wedding. And they asked him, well, if you and he started on the same day, 20 years ago, doing the same job, how come he's president of the railroad and you're still out here swinging the axe and pick with us? He says, I'll tell you why. Figured it out a while ago. He says, we started on the same day. When I got up every morning, I just went to work. When he got up every morning, he went to work for the railroad